Welcome back. Well, we have Dr. Jeff Young here on behalf of MemorialCare Medical Center. Well, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. We were chit-chatting a little bit off camera, and you have kind of a local history, and then you also went to Alabama. So let's find out a little bit more about you. Where'd you go to school?
Yeah, so I actually went to school for my undergraduate studies at UC San Diego. And then I went to did my medical school training out in Western University of Health Sciences in Pomona. And lastly, I completed my internal medicine resident training in Brookwood Baptist Health in Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you came back home.
I did.
Are you happy to be home?
Yeah, it's actually really welcoming and getting really back adjusted to everything, so yeah.
Right, right. Well, excellent. Well, tell me now, you are part of the MemorialCare Medical Center, so not actually the hospital, a smaller group which does internal medicine.
Correct, yeah, so our Laguna Woods clinic location's out in our it's in the Aldi's Plaza, and actually we have typically an office of right now 2 physicians right now working there. Mm-hmm.
And is it busy?
It can get really busy, yes.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Instead of going to the hospital, why do people go to the medical centers?
Yeah, so for these medical centers, usually we try and target preventative health for a lot of these patients. And many times we just want to make sure, are you taking your meds correctly? Are we making sure all your medical conditions are all well taken care of? Yeah, so that way we can prevent, patients from actually going to the, hospital. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now you guys said you focus mostly on preventative medicine. So how do you do that being, an internal medicine doctor?
Yeah, so overall we like to, approach things from a whole. I like to just, take a look at your medical history, take and see what medicines you're on. Do we have any medical conditions that we need to know or figure out about for them? And then lastly, we just try and make sure they understand what's going on. Because I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is knowing, what you do outside of the clinic. Making sure you know what to do at home, because that's where most of your care involves.
Let me ask you this. Obviously there's a difference in the way that doctors approach things, right? Yeah. Maybe someone who's been doing your type of work for 40 years might approach something differently than someone like yourself who may have, obviously not 40 years. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, so I think experience can tell you one thing, but also keeping up to date in modern medicine is also really, important. And so I think being able to understand and convey what you know to the patient is very important. But at the end of the day, you have to understand where the patient's coming from, understanding, what they want, how they want to approach things, and so it's always catered to them at the end of the day.
All right, excellent. Now, interestingly enough, I've actually never talked about this with the doctor before about driving.
Yeah.
Now, we have many folks here in Laguna Woods who may be of an older age that are still driving, and they have all their faculties and everything's good. So at what point do you start to talk to them about driving? Yeah,
so driving safety is actually a really important topic to talk about with patients. I think it usually comes up with 4 different sources. Usually the first is the patient usually wants to talk to me about, their driving and, how well they can drive. Mm-hmm. Second is usually, a concerned family member or, a friend. Usually they're, a little bit more concerned about, how they're driving. Mm-hmm. Third is usually DMV will, from time to time, may send me a request, to evaluate this patient's, driving capabilities. Yeah. And then lastly, it's a job. Usually when they have an annual health exam, they'll talk to me about, hey, can we get an evaluation about how this patient is driving? Okay. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, they do take medications. Are there certain kinds that can certainly affect the way you drive?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Many times, medicines that we always have to watch out for patients who are driving, usually chronic pain medicines, medicines that patients take, such as muscle relaxers, or things to help with anxiety or for sleep, such as your Xanax or your Ativan. So these are medicines that I typically watch out for patients when it comes to driving.
So when you come across an individual who is a very sensitive subject, where you go, well, maybe you shouldn't be driving, and here are some alternatives. How do you approach that? That must be a tough one.
Oh, it's very tough, because at the end of the day, taking driving away from an individual, I think really, limits them in their independence and able to do certain things. Right. If I were to approach it, it's more of just like, is this something you're concerned about? What do you think about it? How do you feel about it? So I usually go very open-ended to approach this, very sensitive topic for most patients.
Okay. Now, there is a way for them to get to your location, though, from Laguna Woods instead of driving.
Absolutely. So what was interesting is MemorialCare actually introduced a program called the 55 Plus, and they created it last year in August, and they basically allow free transportation from a patient's home in the Laguna Woods location, and to basically transport themselves to our Laguna Woods clinic. And so this is totally free. A patient can basically, sign up for MemorialCare as their primary medical care, and basically, access that phone number on www.memorialcare.org/55+, and basically call and set themselves up for a free transportation from their home to our Laguna Woods Clinic location and back.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great thing. And this is nice that it's catered just to a certain age group. So I feel like they would be very excited about having something specific to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it helps them entail, because going to the doctor's office is challenging, and, transportation is always going to be a major concern. So easing them and allowing them to, an easier form of access for transportation is always a great thing for patients.
Excellent, excellent. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
I'm really grateful for helping and serving the Laguna Woods community, and I'll always do my best to, make sure everyone, gets well taken care of.
Wonderful. Well, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right. And if you want more information about the 55+ program, you can go to www.memorialcare.org/55+. We'll be right back.